Have you ever just felt completely burnt out by dating? Or maybe you're in a relationship and it just feels numb. Well, you're not alone. Today, we're going to dive into why modern love can feel so exhausting. And we're using the book We, a crash course in the psychology of intimate relationships, as our guide. So, let's get right into it.
You know, we always hear that the opposite of love is hate, but this book argues it's something way more dangerous. Just indifference. That quiet, creeping numbness? That's the real threat to modern relationships, and it's the big problem we're going to unpack today.
So, let's be real for a second. Have you ever felt this? That feeling of just going through the motions? You're swiping on apps with absolutely zero enthusiasm, or you feel totally disconnected in a relationship you're already in. Turns out, this feeling is incredibly common.
And this feeling actually has a name: love inability. Think of it like procrastination, but for your heart. And hey, this isn't some personal failure, it's a modern condition. It's that indifference when you're single, that lack of passion when you're with someone, and that habit of just avoiding problems instead of, actually solving them.
So what does this modern love sickness actually look like in the wild? Let's break down the specific symptoms of this emotional fatigue that so many of us are feeling.
Okay, so here are the signs. If you're single, you might feel a total lack of motivation to even look for a partner. If you're in a relationship, that spark to really nurture it, it's just not there. And when conflict pops up, the easiest path is to just ignore it, right? It all boils down to this deep feeling that the part of you that cares about love has just gone missing.
So, the big question: why does finding and keeping love feel so darn hard right now? Is it a personal problem, or is there something bigger going on? Well, the book argues it's not you, it's the world we live in. Let's dig into that.
Here's the deal. There's been this huge shift. We've moved from what's called an acquaintance society, think of a small town where everybody knows everybody, to a quasi-acquaintance society. Basically, our social networks are now massive, but they're incredibly shallow. We might have hundreds of friends online, but we don't even know our next-door neighbors. And this makes it so much harder to build the kind of trust you need for a deep connection.
So how do we fix this? Well, the book offers a really practical solution. Focus on closed social fields instead of open ones. An open field is a place like a big concert or a park. Yeah, you're around people, but there's no real interaction. A closed field, on the other hand, is something like a book club or a sports team where you have to interact. The takeaway here is pretty clear. To find real connection, you've got to intentionally put yourself in these smaller, more interactive settings.
Okay, we've looked at the environment, but what about love itself? What are the actual essential ingredients? For that, we can turn to psychologist Robert Sternberg's Triangle of Love, which is just a super powerful framework for what a healthy relationship really needs. So according to Sternberg, real lasting love has 3 equal parts: intimacy, passion, and commitment. A healthy relationship needs a balance of all 3. And that love and ability we've been talking about, well, it's often a sign that one of these pillars is weak, or maybe missing entirely. Let's break these down real quick. Intimacy is that deep feeling of being truly seen and accepted for who you are. Passion is the chemistry, right? That exciting, not-so-rational spark. And then there's commitment. That's the conscious choice you make every single day to stay and work on the relationship. It's the foundation that lets everything else grow. Now for something incredibly practical. We know what builds love up, but what actively tears it down? Research from psychologists like John Gottman has actually identified communication habits that are so toxic they can accurately predict the end of a relationship. Here are the 5 biggest destroyers to watch out for.
Seriously, you need to know these because they're the biggest predictors of a breakup. Contempt is by far the most dangerous. We're talking mockery, eye-rolling, anything that communicates disgust. Then you've got sarcasm used as a weapon, defensiveness that turns every little comment into a huge fight, and stonewalling. Yep, the silent treatment. And finally, provocation, which is just needlessly picking fights. If you see these happening in your relationship, that's a major red flag.
All right, our final section. We're going to tackle one of the absolute biggest questions in dating, a debate you've probably had with your friends about 1,000,000 times.
Here it is. Do opposites attract, or should you be looking for someone who's just like you? We've all heard the arguments for both sides, but the research on this is surprisingly clear.
So what's the answer? Similarity. The research is pretty conclusive on this, challenging that popular myth that opposites attract. Well, sure, differences can add a little spice. It's a shared foundation that really creates a lasting relationship.
But, and this is a really crucial point, similarity isn't about surface-level stuff like liking the same music or food. No, it's about the deep stuff, your core values, your worldview, your big life goals. When your fundamentals are aligned, you naturally end up in the same kinds of places, which makes it way easier to meet someone who's on your wavelength.
But here's a fascinating little twist. The book tells the story about a traditional student who is dead set on finding a traditional partner. Then she goes traveling, meets a French photographer, and totally falls in love. Now, on the surface, they seem like complete opposites, but at their core, their values around adventure and living life to the fullest were a perfect match.
And that leaves us with one final challenging question for you. Are the things on your dating checklist what you actually need to be happy, or are they just what you've been told you should want? It's definitely something to think about as you navigate the messy, but still pretty beautiful, world of modern love.